So how a friend of mine went from $50,000 to $1 million net worth using what I'm calling the opposite playbook. And for those of you that are more aggressive by nature and want results that are more quickly, I want you to listen up because this is not for everybody. But in 2017, I watched one of my friends who was making about 50 grand a year and was following every piece of traditional financial advice out there, right? 7 years later, he has hit $1 million net worth by doing the exact opposite of what they tell you and even sometimes what I tell you. So look, I get it. When you're making 50 grand a year, everyone tells you the same thing. And I've told you guys all this too, right? Budget harder, skip the coffees, start a side hustle, invest in index funds, and then you just sit here and wait as time compounds over the long haul. Now, here's the thing. I have an MBA, and I spent 25 years in finance, and even I have bought into this playbook for many years. And to be fair, there are still some parts of it that many people need to continue doing, but it is not the full answer for the long term. And here's what nobody's talking about, okay? Traditional advice is designed to keep you in the middle class, okay? It's safe, it's slow, it assumes you're going to work until you're 65 or older. And if you're watching this, you're probably already sensed something is a little off about that plan, right? The wealthy do not follow this playbook. Maybe at the beginning they followed it, but they don't for the long haul. And now they're using what I'm calling is a completely different set of rules. And once I figured this out, and I figured it out pretty much in my late 30s, everything for me started to change as I was doing a lot of what I told you at the beginning and doing those fundamentals, but we were also starting to do a lot of other things. And here's the thing. I'm not selling you a course. I'm showing you exactly what I did and what my friend did too. I'm going to show you the numbers, the timeline, the specific moves that took him from paycheck to paycheck at 50 grand to 7 figures. And it all happened in real time. So I'm going to break this into 3 phases because that's exactly how it happened. So let's start off with the first phase, which I'm calling the foundation phase. And this is where he built his launch pad. This usually takes you about a year or 2 to get going. And then there's the acceleration phase. This is where the real growth happened. And then third was called the multiplication phase, where wealth really started to happen and a lot more quickly. So let's start off with this foundation phase, okay? Here is the first opposite move that I want to tell you about. So instead of budgeting harder, we want to focus on one number and one number only, and that is our investment rate, okay? Not your savings rate, but your investment rate, because sometimes I loop savings and investing together, but we want to talk about your investment rate, okay? So traditional advice, and even some of my own advice that I've given you over the years says, if you save and invest 20%, if you can, right off the top, that is the way to go. But the typical approach is to put money in savings first, build up that 6-month emergency fund, and then start investing. And I did personally a little bit of the opposite. I kept just enough cash for 1 month overhead emergency fund. And sometimes I even tell people to do a little less. And I had that money in reserve. And then I put everything else into investments immediately rather than, putting it in my high yield savings account. And why is that? Well, one, I know I'm very disciplined. But 2 is because inflation was quietly eating away at my cash while it just sat there earning very little money. And meanwhile, even conservative investments were producing much better long-term returns. And the math was clear. The safe approach was actually costing me money. But here's where the real mindset shift started, is I stopped thinking of investing as something you do with extra money, and I started treating it like a bill and doing it off the top. So first paycheck of every month, $800 went straight into investments before I paid anything else. Not what was left over, not after what I could scrounge up at the end of the month after my budget. It was the first money out. The second opposite move was I completely ignored diversification, okay? So every financial advisor will tell you to spread your risk, buy index funds, and own a little bit of everything. So instead of diversifying, I focus on just 2 things. 1, a REIT centered on commercial properties, and 2, just buying real estate, and that's it. And why was that? Because at $50,000, diversification is just literally poverty insurance. It's nothing that you really need to worry about. So you need concentration to build wealth. Diversification comes later when you're trying to preserve some of your wealth, and I talk about that in all kinds of other videos. But at this point, I wasn't preserving anything. I was just trying to build up some net worth. So by the end of year 2, I had already invested $37,000. I had not saved it. We got it invested and it started to grow. And that's that initial phase that we're trying to talk about, is to just get the plan started. Now in the next phase, which we're calling the acceleration phase, this kind of takes 3 to 5 years depending on how much you can increase your income and how much you can really start pushing towards investments. But this is where everyone would tell you to start a side hustle, right? Work nights, drive Uber, sell on Etsy, do something that other people are telling you to do. And again, we did the opposite. Instead of adding random income streams, I went all into my career. So I started spending my evenings getting certifications in real estate analysis. Then I bought a property management business. And I didn't start a new career. I just wanted to become more dangerous in the career that I had and find other ways to make money doing what I was already doing. And that worked out perfectly. So here's what happened. The property management business right from the start started producing about $2,000 to $4,000 a month. And I was spending very little time on that. And that extra $24,000 to $48,000 a year was amazing. It helped me buy that small business. It helped me buy some rental property. And that extra income was not the real win. Here's where the real win in getting involved in those property management business was. I got to see how investors think. I watched billion-dollar deals happen and get made. I started noticing patterns in what these investors were doing. And more importantly, I learned why they weren't all buying single-family rentals. Some of them were doing commercial properties. Some of them were buying strip malls. There's lots of different ways to get involved in real estate. And by the way, I do personally own 7 single-family homes, so you won't hear me saying that they're bad investments. I just think they're better suited for different phases. And I kind of think of them as a pool of properties, almost as if they're one multifamily building because I bought them all in the same city in the Midwest. So that's what works for me. But at that point, we did something even crazier than that. Right after the Great Recession, back in kind of the 2011, 2012 timeframe, we bought an 8,000 square foot office building with a partner. And at the time, everybody said we were, crazy to do it. They said you need more savings, that you need more multiple properties, you need to start smaller. But here's the opposite truth again is one good commercial property can beat 10 mediocre residential rentals. And it worked out great because it also gave us a place to run our real estate company that we were locked in. We never had to worry about moving. And we also were able to set that monthly payment, which worked out great for us. So it was much less work. We obviously became our own tenant, but when you buy commercial, typically you get better tenants. We were in longer leases. Those leases are usually 5 or 10 years versus, 12 months in a single family home. And the appreciation to that building is tied a lot of times to the income, not just the comparable sales around it. So that always works out quite nicely as well. So the one property that we had started cash flowing right from day one, and our investment rate exploded almost overnight versus doing single family homes. And to be honest with you, by the end of the 13 years, we own that building now free and clear. That building by itself is worth roughly about $3 million. And it worked out amazingly well as an investment tool for us. So that led us right into the last phase we want to talk about, which is the multiplication phase. And this is kind of once you get here, this is year 6 and beyond. And this is where the traditional playbook really breaks down. They tell you, keep grinding, keep saving, stay the course. And we did the opposite one last time. We sat down with my financial advisor. And after watching my commercial property do what it did, and he was recommending mutual funds, which moved along way more slowly, I realized something. Most financial advisors are trained to keep you safe, not to make you wealthy. And many of them, their model depends on you staying invested with them for 30 or 40 years. And these are all things I always talk about in your 401ks and your retirement plans you should be doing. But for me, I took a much larger piece of control over my money and finances. And this is when we started buying also single family homes. And I got lucky because at the timing I was getting them at very low interest rates. And I treated them like a commercial group. And I own 7 of them. So even if one needed repairs or one had a vacancy for a month, I still had 6 others producing income. And at this point, I probably have 60% loan to value. So if I do have a vacancy, it's not a big deal. But to be honest, I've never had more than one vacant house at a time. It's never been vacant for more than 1 month. And I use all the positive cash flow right now, not to live on those things, but to have money to the side when we need to do some work to those properties and to pay down the mortgage. And like I said, right now, they're probably 60% loan to value. And a lot of investors would tell you, refinance out some of the money, put some of that cash in your pocket. But for me, my personal goal is I want them paid off so as I move forward, I can live on the cash flow. So what I would say to you is this, make sure you have your own personal goals, do what works best for you in both the short and the long term. And then that is where the compound effect starts to really kick in over the long haul. So here's the final opposite move I'm going to tell you guys in this video is this. So everyone else, when they start to make more money, inflates their lifestyle, they start making more money. I still try to live like I was making $50,000 or $75,000, just like my friend did when we started to increase these things. And trust me, the increases went for the short term straight into our investments. While my coworkers, a lot of times, especially in the real estate business, were buying new cars, I was trying to buy more investments so that long term working became more optional. And by year 7, my friend who I've been talking about in this video, their net worth crossed well over $1 million. Mine is in the multi-millionaire range. And so let's close here. Let me be super clear about this, okay? This was not about us, having massive deprivation and ridiculous amounts of sacrifice. We didn't eat top ramen for 2 decades, and neither did my friend. We didn't skip the vacations, but we just did it a little more wisely, a little more smartly. And we just played by a different set of rules while we were in our 20s and 30s and 40s. And because of that, now we are in a great financial position. So the traditional playbook keeps you safe and it keeps you average. The opposite playbook involves more risk, but it will build real wealth and bigger numbers long term. And I honestly think there's room to do a little bit of both. So you get to choose which game you played. And here's what we covered. In the foundation phase, it's invest first, don't do it last. Concentrate your investments and don't diversify. In the acceleration phase, level up your expertise. Don't worry about side hustles and buy assets that institutions would want to buy, right? And lastly, we're in the multiplication phase where you take control away from advisors and financial planners and structure deals the way wealthy people will do it. And if I were starting over today at $50,000 a year in income, these are the same types of moves I would make. And the numbers would be different. The property prices would be higher. The real estate market would be different, but the strategy still holds for the long term. And because this is not really about the real estate market, it's about where you're timing all this. It's about where we are in the economy at the time that you're trying to do all this. And it's about playing by the right set of rules so that you can win long term on your game of money and finance. And here's the question you need to ask. Which playbook are you going to follow? Okay. Drop a comment. Tell me which opposite one surprised you the most, which direction you want to go with all of this. And if you want to see the exact numbers behind some of these commercial deals that I have personally done and some of my clients have done, we'll break them all down in next week's video.